in University of Nebraska, and he has done research papers on exactly how to build compliance in today's world as far as AI is going, and how what we call internal corporate policy, and of course he works significantly at a high level in terms of government policy as well. So it is very I'm gonna be excited to talk to him. Of course, we had many private conversations, but we wanted to bring him to our audience and see. As usual, I'm going to go with some quick updates. I'm not going to go too deep into today because being the end of the year, the overall are the this is a very good article, Why Startups Die. Again, I know I'm an entrepreneurship. I do like Harvey and Ed. Actually, go ahead. Suicide and homicide. That was such beautifully written. When suicide means that two founders, uh, you know, problematic. And by the way, I didn't realize this. The latest data shows that solo founders are more successful. Which again, if people are coming and say, "Well, why are you a solo founder?" I said, "That's because people fight." Running out of money, again, this is the biggest issue in some of these startups, and founder conflict and team breakups, etc., is a big issue, and it has gone to many ways. And then this is very important, founder burnout, etc. So very, very beautifully written, simply. And then of course he also thanks all the people that he has gotten inspiration from. So I think if you need to know one article, how not to do a startup, that is the one. As you know, we are a big reader of Substack, and also make sure that we continue to move. So A to Z is one of the largest, private equity venture capital funders in the community, and they have a very high focus on AI. They are the first investors in OpenAI. Uh, you know, I think it was DoorDash or something. Again, I may be wrong, but the idea is that it is very important. So AI revives cybersecurity hiring. That is so true. Agent native intersections become table stakes, and that is so true. Again, we are going through that. Creative goes, tools go multimodal. Again, that's how we set up our company as well. So if you review this from all of their, growth partners, systems of record lose ground. Uh, these are so importantly done as far as big ideas for 2026, and they have three one. This is part one, and then there's part two, and then part three. So within the part two, actually, this is the renaissance of American factory. And that is so important with the addition of robotics and AI. We're going to see manufacturing return. It's going to take time, but that is actually very important. I don't know if you know this. China is running what we call dark factories now, where there's zero human intervention. You don't even need lights in the factory anymore because all of them have LiDAR and everything. So we are looking at, going through that. And then AI actually does reinforce business models. That is so important. And then this is very important again. Chat GPT will become an app store. I mean, not just Chat GPT, by the way. Gemini also released skills. Claude has skills, etc. And then you're going to see that voice agents are going to take up space. Another in the part three again. I'm just going to reference all of these in the show notes and whatever newsletter, etc. But again, this is an important read for you, for anyone to understand what the future of AI is going to look through in terms of this. So, one-liners, Paul, Harvey, and Ed. If you were to say 2026, this is the year for one line for AI. In your opinion, like these are like one-liners that I shared. So,
All right, let's start with you.
okay. So my thing is that you're gonna go ahead and truly bring small AI, small models into production to decrease per task compute. That is my prediction. So they all talk about so many things, but one thing that they were missing is that rather than just talking about frontier and foundation models, we're going to have true unit economics that works in AI.
All right, I'll go next. I'm going to call it the year of enlightenment for the masses. All of us
Like,
here know what's been going on for years, but it'll be 2026 when the masses will be like, wait a second, I didn't realize I could do X. And we're going to hear that all year where people be like, wow, I didn't know that. And all of us will be like, yeah, this has been here. But I'm not ragging on everybody. I'm just saying this will be the year where people be like, okay, I'm starting to get it.
beautiful.
It was funny because you might not be able to read that, but Harvey said enlightenment. I said We're going from the Middle Ages to Renaissance to Enlightenment.
Paul's here. Paul has a very existential threat opinion of AI. So Paul, you get
I
to
do. I think we could get into the existential dread stuff in a minute. I think it's going to be the year of entertainment, though. I think the way it's going to break through is that people are going to start realizing they can make their own videos and that AI does this better. And I think it's just going to be the year of the at-home digital creator, where anyone who's got an idea can create something. So I think that's how it's going to flow through first. But if you want to
need
go more
share
business
that
side,
Harvey's
that?
video. Yeah, I mean Harvey's was actually made a Sora video when he's. What were you doing, man? Was it a rap or something?
I do all sorts of stuff. I made myself talking to Rocky. I made myself talking to Paul, and then
You're
Mark
so.
Cuban. Yeah, I have fun making videos.
All right.
yeah, I think by the
So
middle of next year, we're going to see just a ton of content produced by the average person just typing in AI stuff, and it's going to get distributed on the local platforms. I think Disney Plus just agreed that they were going to have Sora generated content on Disney Plus.
Yeah, $1 billion, not bad.
Yeah.
So Howard Marks, I follow him. Oaktree Investors are again one of the largest funders in the world. Has made a big sort of Harvey in an AI bubble. As you know, me, Harvey, and Edward Marks do not believe in our bubble. As a matter of fact, compute, needs to come down significantly, and we need much more investment. But again, fairly important article to review. His thoughts are always differently worded, and I like to always read his memos. As a matter of fact, I've been reading his memos for now 10 years. So I just wanted to bring that attention. Moonshot AI, I think this is Moonshot, right? It's Z.AI, I'm sorry. Z.AI actually released GLM version 4, complete open source multimodal portal with, more importantly, native tool use. They can actually have browser automations, which again, Harvey has, uses GenSpark. I sometimes use Manus, etc. But this is a complete Harvey open source model for doing what GenSpark and Manus does, to be available for the masses, and it's insane sort of overall benchmarks is concerned. So again, another open source model from China that is leading the race, and which we last time discussed that it is going to be a big problem. This is again another very good read, September 25th. AI isn't replacing radiologists, and why not? And then that's one of the things that he actually looked into. Nearly all radiology spots are filled, and then why the hell are we not going through that? And one of the things that is islands of automation, and that's another thing that we always talk about, integrations and data silos, etc., which is the biggest challenge in healthcare AI is concerned, and how FDA approved is done, and then we are moving towards what we call single problem to multi-problem detection as well. So that is an important good read as well. Again, what I talked about, new Kimi K2 1 trillion model, which is 4-bit quantized, is now going to run on M3 Ultra, two of them together. But what I'm saying is that's insane. This is $12,000, which has fantastic GPU, CPU, RAM, and you can run basically a frontier, state-of-the-art model on your own home for $10,000, one-time investment. And this is where I keep saying about it that we're going to see, and this is something that I didn't distill. And if I'm going to go ahead and distill this model and make it fine-tuned, I'm going to make it much more cheaper to run. And as I was saying, that the compute cost needs to go down for us to use these many tools that I talked about, and also deliver agentic AI. So we're going to move slowly towards it. This is another good AI post. I like Thomas, just to give him a shout out. And he also said AI filed AI Dog just breakthrough FDA announced free first enterprise agentic, which is not first, by the way, but anyways. And then they're actually saying who's going to win the AI race. And then one of the things that he marked out is this: GE has acquired Interlab, Econometrics, and hopefully save life one day. What I'm saying is that the private equity is owning radiology chains insane. And I agree with you that this is a highly strategic, if you want to do a startup, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm glad that I chose this, even though there's a lot of competition. Again, remember, competition means there's a market, and then the market means there's a client. So again, I keep telling my new that who's going to pay for it. And that is very important to understand if you're building a startup, that somebody's going to pay for your product. So again, this is a fantastic growth opportunity that we're seeing. Again, not to mention some politics here, but we're going to see some change in Federal Reserve, and then that Federal Reserve is going to pump down the overall, interest rate, which is going to significantly push liquidity up, which is going to probably take us back to what we call around COVID level of liquidity, and startups are going to start finally blooming again after a little bit of this dry spell for the last 2-3 years. Thank you so much for all the updates. Paul, again, I probably did not say everything. So first, why don't you introduce yourself? And then, to be honest with you, I play the host because, Harvey and Ed fight so much. It's insane. I'm just kidding. So we're going to just have a casual conversation. There are two main focuses of. The first part of the conversation will be healthcare AI, medical legal, in terms of broader policy, but internal corporate policy for a hospital system or something. And then, of course, we're going to end the show of what we need to do or what we should be afraid of and all of that.
Excellent. Yeah.
So,
So,
go ahead,
thank you.
introduce yourself.
I'm Paul Weitzel. I teach at the University of Nebraska. Before that, I did business law. I still do business law, kind of on the side. I'm researching right now authoritarian risks of AI. So what happens if you get a concentration of power and that concentration is controlled by the government? So that's what I'm focusing on right now. I think that you also have problems if you end up with a concentration of power just among a couple of commercial holders. So if you end up with an oligarchy, I think that would be equally bad. Before that, I worked on the definitions of AI, and so for that, I surveyed 100 and so definitions of AI used in different regulations around the world, and looked at the different ways that they are doing that. It turns out it's all bad. Like, we don't really know how to define intelligence. We don't know how to define intelligence for humans. So trying to figure out like how to define its counterfeit in artificial silicon is something we haven't quite figured out. And so whenever you have a regulation, you need to say we're regulating X or Y or Z, right? If you do that, you have to say, and this is what X is. And since nobody knows what artificial intelligence is or will look like or how it will be shaped, and since it doesn't exist yet, we're kind of stabbing in the dark as to how to regulate any of that. And then before that, I worked on some corporate theory and AI. So one of the big problems in AI, if your listeners will know, is the alignment problem. The alignment problem is essentially like, how do you get somebody who has different preferences than you, different talents than you, different resources than you, to still do what it is that you want them to do, right? And so when you've got a super intelligent AI out there, you want to make sure that it's not going to go rogue and kill everybody, right? Or just go rogue and blow your bank account on silly things like tungsten cubes or whatever. And so how do you get it so that it does what you want? Now, this is, for a lot of the folks in the AI industry, this is like a difficult challenge that is kind of new and interesting because we haven't had full automation before. For folks who've been doing corporate law, this is a 4,000-year-old problem, right? If I hire you as an employee, I can't open up your brain. I can't make sure that your interests are entirely aligned with mine. You have different resources, different talents, and I'm not able to monitor you entirely, and yet we're still able to make it work. So my first article there was just importing a bunch of corporate law principles that we used and saying, if we took these principles that we've been doing for literally 4,000 years and plugged them into AI, you can probably get some progress. And the reason I think that's valuable is that corporate law has developed over 4,000 years, and so we've had a lot of time to kind of work out the kinks. And AI doesn't have that luxury, right? If we mess up AI alignment, we don't get another shot. Depending on how quick the takeoff is. But yeah, so those are kind of the bigger projects I'm working on.
Awesome.
I just want a couple of things just to clarify. Artificial intelligence, we keep using the word, but at the end of the day, the word should be alien intelligence. And the word alien intelligence really means is that there is an autonomous body that can take decisions, and not only with the rise of AI robots, potentially actually change things in the physical environment. So that's number one. I'm going to let Harvey first, how he defines, actually both of you. Ed, why don't you define AI in your sort of whatever terms, or Harvey? And then this idea that we don't even know how to define intelligence is like mind-boggling to me, because like my mom thinks I'm very intelligent, but my wife thinks that I need to be, put in jail. So that's another problem that we have to talk about, that, hey, my mom still calls me a prince, and my wife says, why does your mom doesn't know who you are? So I'm just saying that there is this subjectivity part of it. So let's just, I told you that I feel like AI intelligence, artificial intelligence, should actually be called alien intelligence. And this is how we should, again, opening up the brain and everything. So Ed, you go first, Harvey, you go second, and then Paul, let's have a discussion on defining AI.
Well, I think my definition may change after listening to our podcast here. Signal Intelligence. I'm always learning. because I still kind of like enamored a little bit with the old school definition, and I've been talking about this. There's a video out there when I was at Cleveland Clinic in 2018 talking about this, saying, hey, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. So I still kind of the old school, like, hey, this is my partner. This is something to help me move faster, move quicker. So I need to really think through it. So I like the alien quite a bit. So I may be changing here during signal and symptoms, but but to the point we made earlier, when we talk about augmented, that's kind of like maybe the middle age definition. We talked about going middle age to Renaissance to Enlightenment. So I'm ready to make that switch. Maybe after Harvey gives his definition.
Oh God, this is a tough one. Good. I always like the alien ones because it does feel like I'm talking to an alien or someone behind the computer really talking to me. The way I define it is software that perceives the information, that takes in that information, makes the decision, and acts towards a goal without my continuous input. With that said, there's always continuous input because it's biased that's into the algorithm. But just for the definition, that's how I define it.
Yeah,
Paul.
so that's a really common definition. Autonomy is in almost, 2/3 of the definitions that I surveyed. So there's kind of two basic routes that researchers have gone on since Alan Turing, really. In Alan Turing's day, they said, well, it's got to mimic a human, right? And so does it do things that like a human would do? Does it do things in the way that a human do? And I think that goes to your point that like it doesn't. Like it's kind of alien. But then you say like, what do even humans do, right? And so there's things that, like I can't spell to save my life, but you put me in front of a corporate law contract and I do just fine, right? And so it's like we all have our own jagged frontier. Right? Niels Bohr could solve particle physics, but couldn't follow the plot of an American movie, right? And so we have our own jagged frontier among ourselves, right? And so you could say, does it act kind of like a human would act? And you say, well, who knows what that is? Because all of us are so different, right? And none of the intelligence tests that we even have right now, the standard a test that you would take to like get into Mensa or something, would even evaluate your ability to do like music or something. So Bach would not be considered a genius because it's just not the thing that's on the IQ test. It's very subjective. And so if you say it's got to be kind of human-like, we don't really know what that is. And so Turing pushed back on that. He said, and another researcher said it, I think, a little bit more succinctly. He said, we don't judge how well how well an airplane flies by comparing it to pigeons, right? It's just a different thing. Like I said, it's an alien thing. And so we should look at it, is it capable? Is it able to do lots of things? And so that was Turing's approach. He said, the way we should consider something intelligent or not intelligent is whether it can respond to questions, right? And so the Turing test is the famous test for have we reached artificial general intelligence? The general idea was that you would stick a human and a robot behind a sheet, not actually behind a sheet, not actually a robot, but I'm going to simplify for the podcast here. Right? You stick them behind a sheet, and then they kind of text back and forth. And you got a human on the other end who's texting with the robot and texting with a human. And the test is, can the human figure out which one is the robot, right? And he said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how it works. It doesn't matter if it's thinking like humans. What matters is, are the results kind of right? And he thought the Turing test was a good approach, this imitation game, he called it, because you could ask it any question that you wanted. So if you wanted to say, robot should be really good at chess before we declare it intelligent, well, you could just ask it questions about chess. And because this kind of dialogue format allows it to converse about a number of things, he thought it was a general test of intelligence. I think we've blown past the Turing test by quite a ways at this point, but we just keep redefining the goalposts. That's the other kind of piece about defining this. As soon as you say that robots can do something, people are like, oh yeah, but it's just a toaster, really, a bunch of math equations. It was never really smart. It's a stochastic parrot. And so you end up never getting to a point where people can agree on what is intelligent. But it has real consequences for things like healthcare and other industries where you're going to say, we are going to regulate AI, and then you got to say, okay, great, tell me what AI is. Because if you're going to tell me, a lot of the definitions that they use right now would apply to a sundial, right? The EU AI Act's definition would cover a sundial, right? And so, is a sundial artificial intelligence? Obviously not, right? It would certainly cover a $12 calculator. And so, if you're going to regulate these things, you got to be able to say what they are, and we can't say what it is, and so I don't think we can really regulate it very well.
Very interesting.
Sure. And it's a moving target, right? So
Absolutely.
we regulate today, and then literally someone messes with it, or some kind of drift in the algorithm, and now it's a different algorithm that you're regulating.
California originally proposed a definition of intelligence based on quantitative values, right? Like number of flops, right? And then you have DeepSeek come out, and they do it at 95% less than anyone has ever done before. And so you're like, okay, so I guess that's not it, right? And the problem is we're trying to regulate something that doesn't exist, right? And we're saying, well, it may look like this, it may look like that, but at the end of the day, like, we don't know what it's going to look like. And so you draft a regulation, turns out to be just totally wrong, because then you have DeepSeek come in, they do it at 95% of or 5% of the value, and you've missed the whole issue. Like, what we're trying to get at is capacity, right? Is this thing really, really capable? And so I think doing a general regulation of AI is probably a mistake. I think it's got to be regulated in the specific industry that it's in, rather than saying we're going to regulate AI as AI, because we don't know what that is.
Just want to repeat one more thing. Of course, we have large language models, generative AI, small language models, but FDA doesn't have a pathway for regulation. And it's a free fall. Everyone's building an AI scribe. No have freaking idea that is it working on ophthalmology, ENT, like in healthcare right now. FDA regulates everything. It does not have a regulatory pathway. To Paul's point very nicely, that we don't even know how to freaking define it, because essentially, in what I say is that you're hiring another employee. You're not hiring another computer program, and that's the mind shift that we have to figure out exactly how do you define it. Ed, thoughts, comments?
No, I think it's spot on. I think that's probably one of the reasons that we struggle so much with making decisions around, the selection of AI and implementation of AI, and we put so many guardrails around it that we sort of retard the opportunity. So yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah. And it's the Wild Wild West, right? I forget the name of the company, but they were selling an AI, but what they did is they had like 100 other engineers, and then people would ask questions, and then they would, use different codes, different stuff, show it to them and be like, man, your AI is so good. And it was just humans in the background doing all that information.
So I'm going to push back on you, Harvey and Ed. Because, by the way, just to remind you, Paul, Harvey is actually officially Ministry of Health for Singapore, a chief AI advisor. Edward Marks is ex-CIO of Mayo Clinic and Cleveland. I'm not Mayo Clinic, sorry, Cleveland Clinic, and they sit in boardrooms and everything. So Harvey and Ed, Paul is telling you that you don't even know how to say or define AI. And now you're sitting in front of the Ministry of Health in Singapore. And by the way, he's also Chief AI Officer of Phantom Space. So he's going to put AI in the freaking space. That's one way to do it, to leave all regulation in space, because aliens can regulate it. But what I'm saying is, so what I'm saying is that, Ed, you have an amazing law professor here with business law and internal corporate policies and everything. How would you still try to because we're talking philosophy at the moment, how do you practically implement it in terms of corporate policy? And Harvey, how do you implement it at the level of Ministry of Health? And how do we sort of solve this issue, at least in a way? Because look, let me give you one example. When I submit to FDA, I have a PCCA form, which is basically a predetermined change control. What is predetermined change control means is that if I'm going to remove my now forward, for example, an AI algorithm, within that framework, think of like, okay, this is a definition, this is a moving target. How would you approach it?
Well, I'll just start us off. I think at the end of the day, it's a moving target, but we need three core principles to help us guide us. Number one, what is the authority? What can that AI do? Right? Number two, who's accountable for what the AI is doing? And number three, looking at it from the lens of the corporation, for the country, does it align with my goals? And if we use those three principles, at least that's a starting block of how can we use this moving forward. And that's kind of where I start, because just to be blunt, when I meet with the Ministry of Health, it's funny because they'll tell me like, Harvey, all these companies are starting AI products and it's affecting our population. And how do we regulate a moving target? And it's like we have these great philosophical talks and how to start. And then that's where I have fun because I'm putting on the doctor hat and I tell them how I see it. Then I put on my patient hat and see how I do it. And then I say, you know what, as an AI person, this is how we can put all three together. So it's really kind of fun. Paul and Ed, what do you guys think?
Yeah, my approach is, just being incremental. So, because I don't know, because we could sit around and debate philosophy, like what's the definition of AI? No one's going to all agree on the same thing. And I think this happens a lot in boardrooms and in C-suites of hospitals, other industries too, but I only know healthcare. And so nothing gets done. So I'm a big advocate of let's just start taking some steps and do things, and we're going to learn along the way, and then we start, building the guardrails or whatever we need to do. So I'm not saying you go in blind. I think we all know enough to go in, start, get some experience, and out of that experience, we'll sort of figure things out. I don't think we can wait, try to figure things out, and then deploy. Then we're going to lose so much ground, and that's the way healthcare has been historically. I think we just got to start pushing, and then building at the same time.
Yeah, I'm very pro building. I think that slowing down would be a major mistake, and I think that the regulations around this, because they're so poorly defined, oftentimes will lead to people not acting. And I think that's one of the biggest dangers of this. Is so to just one quick example here. The EU AI Act is I think probably the biggest and most influential AI piece of legislation that's out there. It was passed with a definition that also says, oh, we also include any definitions that are in the following other implementations that we've done in other regulations. And so it kind of sucks in incorporation by reference all these other regulations. One of them is maritime law. That in that one, it defines it to include anything that is according to the high seas, right? The law of the high seas. And so literally to be sure whether or not you apply as AI under the EU AI Act, you need a maritime lawyer. Right, and so they've regulated this so much that nothing's happening. Right, they're killing their industry in Europe because of this, and nobody's moving forward. And I think it's bad for the patients. It's bad for the people who want to produce and create. But you just can't build AI in the EU.
So Paul, just to push back a little bit more. Like, here's the thing. Think of me that I am. By the way, I am going to be. There's a major announcements coming from Harvey and my side starting January, February. But let's say I'm a chief medical AI officer, right? And I need to build a corporate policy for the hospital. And then should I stick always to narrow AI? That's one thing, which is true, trusted FDA. But then I want to, by the way, if you look at our podcast and before, we are very, which Edward's key term is sandboxes for testing and everything. And we are doing sandboxes, and then finally, of course, going wild in the wild, wild west. So from a corporate hospital level policy, what would your recommendations be to a chief medical AI officer to structure a program that is both ethical, which is important to us, and then legally, because one of the things that I have problem with, let me give you an example. So I said I have a breast imaging one. I told them there's a big university wanted to buy my product even before it's FDA approved and want to start testing it. We cannot sell it, of course, start testing it. The radiologist director comes in and says, dude, what the hell are you doing? I said, what do you mean by that? I said, look, we had last year 12 cases missed through you, and your AI is going to detect it. And now what am I going to do when AI says there's a breast and the radiologist says no? Who's going to be legally liable? Because we know now that 3 years down the line, AI predicts better. So do you understand the real practical conundrum that we are in? That how, as a neurologist, by the way, I'm a neurologist. Harvey is the ED physician, and Ed is amazing. So what I'm saying is that we have physicians here who are saying don't do AI because I'm going to be smacked in my ass because of it.
Yeah, so my view is, I deal a lot with the government stuff, and my government view is generally kind of hands off. I think for business folks, you have to get in and you have to kind of move forward. And so for me, I would have a policy that's based on transparency, like how are you using it? And if you want to bring in a new product, come talk to us. Maybe we can just like look and see what data was this trained on. I might have something that just says, like, are you aware that these things can have bias and things like that? But I would be focused on transparency and information and allowing the physicians to... it's kind of the same problem that we run into in a lot of other AI fields, right? In AI fields, they're like, oh, we need to come up with a new law for AI violations of copyright or AI violations of theft. And it's like, well, we already have laws against theft, right? The physicians already have like rules and liabilities, and I'm not an expert in those, but I would expect that a lot of those are probably just going to apply the same as if you use any other tool. I would be more concerned about using fully autonomous AI, like agents. I would be very careful with. But the other stuff I'd want to get out as quick as possible. I'd also want to fast track it. I'd want it not to just sit in committees for 9 months while we figure it out, because by the time it gets through those committees, the product's going to be outdated and not the best product out there anyway. But I think that the hospitals should be using the latest tools out there. So I would focus on transparency and a little bit of training. Although I find that most training tends to not have very much. It doesn't have the effect that we kind of hope that it would.
Ed and Harvey, thoughts?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a moving target, and like you guys said, you want the best product for the patients. What came to mind immediately is, can the hospital afford it or not, and can we afford not to use it? You know, it goes both ways. As far as physicians going, it breaks my heart to see some of the technology is there. We're not using it, and I see people dying. I'm like, gosh, this could be fixed. You know, it's truly sad. With that said, I'm proud to be with a team like you guys that are forward-thinking leaders, because what you guys are doing is you're influencing the leaders to look at things differently, and as a result, will make change, and those change will ultimately, in particular in healthcare, will help those people. Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, AI is going to become more and more pervasive, like we talked about in the very beginning when we were trying to define it. And I think it's just going to become part of the landscape. Like a good example from healthcare would be virtual care. We used to have separate virtual care. This is virtual care. Now it's just healthcare. For most organizations, there's still some still carve it out. I think it's going to be similar with AI. I don't know what the time frame is. Hopefully not that long. But yeah, right now we're standing up all these AI governance structures, and like we said, well-intentioned, but probably most of them are sort of hindering great patient care. And so we're going to go through this, this friction, and it's just part of natural growth that we all go through in different aspects of life. But again, my bias, and I think it sounds like most of us, we tend to be, understand the risks and all sort of things, but go ahead and move forward and get some experience. And you can do this in areas that don't have a negative impact in case something goes sideways. We get that experience, get better, and then we hit the higher risk areas. And obviously during that whole time, AI continues to improve and those sort of things. So, but I think we all have this bias for action.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could have I really like that. I wonder if you could have a separation of the policy between I'm using this as a supplement or I'm using this as a replacement. Because like if a radiologist looks at it and says, here's what I think, and then puts it through the AI just to check, that's going to be a very different risk profile than if the radiologist just says, let's send it to the AI, it should be fine. And so I wonder, I don't know how hospital policies are drafted. That's not my zone, but it seems like that might be a useful distinction.
Well, just to shed light, that's literally my goal. As a physician, how can I tell physicians how to use the tool, right? You just gave a great example. I may not know how to use the tool. I'm like, am I supposed to just take this, send it to AI and take it in? Like, I'm kind of confused. Or do I teach them to be like, dude, be a doctor first, use this noggin, understand that you have the ultimate license and the veto power, and this tool is one more of many tools, and this is how we use it, and this is how it's going to change it. And by the way, here's the food label on the AI, and here's the biases of how the algorithm does not really work for that particular patient. So when that patient comes in, don't apply it. And so those are the things.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Paul, when you said the tool. Just to let you know, there's Class 2A, software as medical device, which is essentially clinical decision support system. So all my devices are Class 2A, approved or approval process. Class 3, which is actually, for example, you have a pacemaker, which is actually completely autonomous. So they automatically read the rhythm and then fire a defib. And those implanted defibrillators have software in medical device, and those are Class 3. And there are very, very few devices that are currently autonomous. But again, of course, we're going to move towards this. I know we're going to talk about healthcare. We've been talking about this healthcare for the past 6 months. But since Paul's here, I just want to move today to and we're at the end of the year. And I want to talk, because of his current research that he's doing, about the importance of, you talked about EU, which is the stupid policy, right? I mean, in terms of at least implementation and how do you even define it and all of that. Now that's one problem. Then there was a second number problem is that we are a humanities last exam, and Gemini Pro is pushing through, DeepSeek is pushing through, ChatGPT 5.2 came out, and we are constantly. And by the way, just for people to know, NVIDIA's latest chips are not in production. Grok 5 that has 10,000 B100s or whatever, I forgot the NVIDIA's latest chips, and it's going to be trained on 1.4 to 5 trillion parameters, because I just showed you 1 trillion parameter. this has not stopped. As a matter of fact, if you really look at it, nobody has used, because it just released 6 months ago. They're building the data centers that's going to provide the training, and then you're going to have the release and the inference. So it is a non-stop thing. So Paul, paint us a picture of what the first importance of, because it's the first time, by the way, we are very anti-government. I'm a very anti-government. That's why I moved to Texas, by the way. I'm just being honest, very, very, because we like transparency. At least I do. I will say whatever it's on my mind, because again, if you're not transparent, it's going to be a problem. So paint me a picture that while you're researching this, what do you think are the problems, and what is the importance of policy, and how, as us, I mean, we can we are leaders in healthcare. That's a clear. How would you say that, Junaid, Ed, Harvey, you need to define these things to Singapore, space, Cleveland Clinic, or, where I'm going to be a chief medical AI officer, whatever. So the question really is that, how paint us a picture, big picture.
Okay, so do you want the full doom scenario? Is that how things go wrong?
And
Okay.
please also give us the rosy solutions too.
I will try, but so I think that there are things that are going to be bad, right? So I think there's going to be job loss. I think there's going to be lots of problems with drug addiction and other issues that are going to become a bigger issue. I think employment's a really big one. Bias is certainly an issue. But then there are the apocalypses where it just goes like remarkably wrong, like really, really, really bad. So I'd say the apocalypses kind of fall into a few camps. One is like the Terminator scenario, which I know we kind of like laugh about, but the government has increased its funding of AI by 12,000%, right? And looking towards autonomous AI. So I think it's one that you have to keep in mind. I don't think it's the most likely, but I also think there's some game theoretical reasons why we might think that we are pushing ourselves towards war with autonomous bots, which is a bad thing. I think there is the commercial apocalypse where we all end up without jobs, living in the sewers, fighting the Rat King for bits of scraps while Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk live in castles in space or whatever, right? There's that one. There's the government apocalypse, which is just authoritarian tyranny. We perfect Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon, right, where you can monitor an entire civilization for the cost of $20 or whatever. And then I think the last one is the spiritual apocalypse, which I think is going to be the hardest one to avoid. And that's just the idea that, like, we're doing this podcast because it gives us a sense of meaning that we're helping and we're making a difference. And if everything that I do could have been done faster, better, and cheaper by an AI, I think there's going to be a real crisis of meaning for a lot of people. So I think those are the big apocalypses. The one I focus on right now is the authoritarian one. And specifically, I'm worried that many of the laws that we are passing will tend to concentrate power. So it's an old critique from public economics that when you pass a regulation, it tends to increase the costs of operating in that space. And these are fixed costs, so that if you sell more, you can distribute those fixed costs among a broader amount of goods. And therefore, the total cost per good that you sell or service that you sell is lower than a new entrant. So whenever someone imposes regulation, it creates a barrier to entry. Short of it is, if we put in regulations that say you've got to have 1,600 hours of training before you can become a hairdresser, there are fewer hairdressers, right? And if there's fewer hairdressers, prices for hairdressers go up, right? When we pass laws that raise the cost of doing business in AI, we increase concentration. Now, the reason that this is a particular problem, and I'm sorry that I'm on a rant here, just stop me if we.
No, this is good. Keep going.
Keep going.
All
I love
right.
it.
I will go for like 6 hours if you don't stop me here. So
No worries.
You'll need to step in. The reason it's going to be a problem here more than in other places is like worse than hairdressing, right? Is because the AI is going to be our primary source of information and employment, right? And so if someone controls that, they control my ability to make a living, and they control what I think and what I know, right? So let's apply that to tyranny and oppression. So if you were in Germany during the reign of the Stasi, they had to have 68 Stasi members for every 1,000 members of the population, right? Huge expenses, right? In order just to maintain the totalitarianism that they wanted to do, right? China has 700 million autonomous facial recognition cameras right now, right? It's basically free, right? And so surveillance has become basically free. And so you have kind of three areas where tyranny is going to be the most durable tyranny that we've ever experienced. One is that the propaganda will be better, right? And so there will be fewer people that dissent because we'll all just kind of agree on the same things. If they get control of the primary source of our information, then at that point, we just agree with them. And so why would we ever rebel? Because I love Big Brother, right? Two is the surveillance, right? The surveillance is going to be just out of control because everything you do will be done through this AI, and they can just monitor your chats. You've also got a little tracker in your phone, and so I think the surveillance technology is going to be way better than it's ever been before. And so, to the extent someone it becomes a dissident, you're going to be able to spot them much more quickly and follow and see what they're doing. And then third is the loyalty aspect. So the reason that a lot of tyrannies and authoritarian governments fail is because at some point the authoritarian leader says, I want you to go shoot those college students. I want you to go shoot those old women in the Tsarist revolution, right? And the people go there and they look at them and they point their gun at them and they're like, I'm not going to shoot you. You're my brother. You're like my mother, right? And so the folks who have been sent to do the order put down their guns and they just say they're not going to have it, right? And then people start chipping away the wall, or they go attack the Tsarist palace, and that's the end of the authoritarian regime. You're not going to have that, right? It's going to be much more efficient to take out the people who are actually dissidents. So because you have perfected propaganda, perfected surveillance, and perfected loyalty among all of your henchmen who run for like a nickel's worth of electricity, it's going to be really easy and the most to maintain a tyranny, and it will be the most durable tyranny in history. So I think that this is an understudied risk that I would really like to avoid.
Harvey,
Sorry, I could go into reasons why I think it's more likely in AI to pop up, but that's just painting the picture of why things might be bad. I could also say why they might be okay.
Harvey, he just described the Antichrist, you know.
It's coming.
Yeah.
So
I gotta check if when I flip my Apple products, there's 666 on them.
Well, that's it. I think that's the upside. Maybe Jesus comes. I don't know. Maybe that's our upside.
Yeah, there we go. Wow, dude, that was awesome, my friend. I totally connected those dots, and I have internally thought about those things. And you're right. And this is why we need leaders like us to be out there to talk about the good, the bad, and the unknown, so that we can explain and see things before they come, so that our leaders and so forth can create the structure, hopefully the guardrails, and the guidance to make sure those things don't happen. And this is why I'm really excited about, I know this is going to sound like I'm talking to both sides of my mouth, but excited about the entire planet, because the more the planet is one, the more we start seeing example like the UA is shooting themselves in the foot by doing this regulations, but it's also giving examples of maybe this is a guideline of how we should do things, but maybe that's just one extreme. And when we have other countries and parts of the United States that regulate differently, and when you put it all together, I really think that gives us the right formulation and balance. Ed and Paul?
I'll defer to Ed. I've said so much.
Yeah, I don't know that I could add a whole lot more to that discussion. That was very well said. Yeah, and it's a great warning, Paul. You know that we need to take this seriously. You know, because I tend to be sort of like, hey, less regulations, less rules, the better. But ultimately, how do we retain our soul in the age of alien intelligence? And that's the big question. I don't have an answer for that. It's something that I'll have to keep thinking about. But to your point, I think it is a call to action. It's like we have to be thinking about it now as we craft the future.
Yeah. And I saw you hugging on your dog, so I get it. Go out there and hug your babies and stuff, because, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the future. So yeah. I'm with you, my friend.
With an AI dog. I saw one. I was downtown somewhere recently, and some guy was walking his AI dog. It was I didn't want to take a picture just because I just didn't want to reinforce what but it was pretty interesting. It was very interesting.
Now, Paul, I want you to back with the floor. I want to see how do you see us getting there, and then the good, the bad, and the ugly of what you just said. Keep going, because this is fun.
Yeah. So where it could go, how we could end up getting there is, I think that there are a lot of people who are afraid of AI, and I think it's a good thing to be a little bit afraid of AI. I think anyone who's like PDoom is 0, like I don't fully trust that person. Anyone who's like PDoom is 100, like I don't trust that person either. Like there should be some nuance, and I think most people who've studied the issue come out a little bit in the middle, but you should be a little bit afraid. And so when that fear hits you and you're like, okay, so if this thing happens and if it goes wrong, what are the consequences? The consequences is we lose everything. Like it's a negative infinite payoff. And so if you're facing a negative infinite payoff or a really, really good payoff, hey, there's less cancer. Like it makes rational sense to say, okay, well, let's just avoid that. And maybe we won't cure as much cancer right now, but at the end of the day, it'll be fine because at least we're not under a dictatorship, or at least it doesn't kill all of us, right? Extinction is the worst possible outcome. I'm just going to say that the second worst possible outcome, though, is a concentration of power of AI, right? And so what the people who are afraid of the extinction risk will do is they'll say, we need a pause button. Like Miri right now, like Yudkowsky, he literally says, like, what we need is a stop button, right? And then like he never even considers, okay, who has access to the stop button, right? And are they going to use it on their own AI, right? So if President Trump or President Biden, whichever one you hate, imagine that person is the only person with AI, right? How do you feel about it now? Are you still just comfortable saying that that person should be the one that can shut down my AI while they keep running it? And the way I see it, it's almost like a Second Amendment argument. Like, I'm not a gun guy. You guys are Texans, so I feel comfortable saying this. But the idea is, like, if Putin's going to come at me with his AI, the best thing I can have is my own AI to say, oh, wait, look, this looks like propaganda from Moscow. Oh, I just sorted it, threw it away. I've sent some little algorithms to distract it for a while so it doesn't know that you're onto it. But it's going to keep going. You take it away from me, right? That's fine. But you're not going to be able to take it away from Xi Jinping. You're not going to be able to take it away from Putin. You're not going to take it away from the tech bros, and you're not going to take it away from the U.S. government. And so if those people have it, I want it, right? And so that I can protect myself from it. And so I think the best outcome is that, ironically, the Chinese models continue to progress and provide these open AI solutions, right? Allowing liberty for the rest of the world. Somehow, right? And so we're going to depend on China to save liberal Western values. So I think we need to get our
that
own
notion in itself is insane. What you just
It's
said.
insane. It's insane, right? And so my hope is that we don't do something that would kill open source. And these are subtle things, right? People will say, well, you've got to make the AI liable, the AI producer liable for any damage that it does. And if you do that, what you're essentially doing is saying there will be no open source AI, right? And so thinking through the consequences of when we pass these regulations just for safety, right? Like, let's just have a stop button. Well, what would happen if that's handled by someone who has bad intentions, right? And if you don't take that second step, like, you really shouldn't be regulating.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
so the
is
sunny
awesome.
side. I gotta say a sunny side, don't I?
Oh yes. Yeah, I
I
gotta be
think
able to
sunny-
sleep tonight, my friend.
Yeah, I think it might be that I'm religious, and so it might be that I just say, oh, Jesus will come and fix it. But I honestly think that, like, we are more likely than not heading towards a society in which we have prosperity, just abundance, and the idea that like most of us love our jobs. Like, if you're on this podcast, you probably love your job. Like, you get a lot of fulfillment out of it. It's wonderful. I don't think most people are that way, right? Like, I got a lot of friends who work at McDonald's or Taco Bell, and they do not love their lives. And they go into work and they file their TPS reports, and they're just like, what am I even doing? Like, I've got this, like, beautiful gift of life, and I spend it behind a desk doing garbage reports that nobody cares about, right? If we could eliminate all of that, I think that would be a huge gift to humanity, right? And I think also the way that we value people could change, right? So it used to be that 500 years ago, your value to me depended on how strong you were, right? And then we commoditize, like, because can you go plow the field for 6 hours or whatever, 12 hours? Can you hammer in these railroad ties, right? And then we commoditize strength, and the value of strength goes to zero. Intelligence is kind of the next phase of that. Now we value people by how smart you are. Like, what can you give me, right? We're commoditizing intelligence. I think the value of intelligence goes to zero, which leaves us kind of like, what do you got left? Like, when you look at the D&D stats of, like, the 6 categories of what you got basically just charisma, right, I guess? And so I'm
That's why
hopeful.
Harvey is the most eligible bachelor in Dallas.
but I'm hopeful it leads to this world in which we value you not because of what you can give me anymore, but because, like, you are in the image of God. Like, you are a human being that I can value because of that. And so, like, the perfect rosy outcome is that we don't have to go to jobs that we hate. We can explore. I think we're absolutely going to learn 50 to 100 times faster than we do now, because it'll be stuff that we're interested in. And we have kind of our needs met, and we can, like, live the life that we actually want to live. And so I think for, like, 40% of the population, that's going to
As
be
long
really,
as
really
as long as we bow to Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman.
good. I think we need universal basic income, which is a weird thing to say given that I just fought against socialism, but or collectivism. But I think universal basic income has probably got to happen, and I would do it by taxing electricity, distributing it through. There's 2 ways that I think I would distribute it, but that's kind of far afield if you want to talk about that.
No, I got to hear these 2 solutions.
So I think,
Jump in
I think,
there.
Yeah, so collecting the tax, they're always saying, like, let's tax the robots. It's like that. Tell me what a robot is. Like, the first toasters were marketed as toasting robots, right?
I'm
The
not
first
gonna sleep
dishwashers
tonight.
were marketed as dishwashing robots. Like, tell me what a robot is, and we can do that. It makes no sense. So then you go into, well, why don't we tax whenever you lay someone off? It's like, well, did I lay them off because they're automated, or did I lay them off because they weren't good at their job? Like, and then we just end up in Europe where you can never fire anyone. So I think the best way of doing it is to tax electricity as a way of generating the income, right? Because electricity is a good proxy for economic productivity. I don't love it, again, but there's got to be something, right? It's a good proxy for economic activity. And so if you tax the electricity, then you will get at the actual production of things. And then I think you distribute it through the, one of 2 ways. You distribute it either through the disability system, right? So the Social Security disability system is set up to where if you are mentally or physically incapable of holding a job, it's kind of the girding principle of it, then we give you disability, right? And so it's right now to be mentally or physically unable to hold a job. It's you've got to have an IQ below 70, or you've got to have unable to use your arms or legs or be able to stand for very long. I think we're heading to a point though where all of us will be mentally disabled. Like none of us will be smart enough to hold it. Like if you need an IQ of 230 in order to hold a job, then yeah, we're all mentally disabled. So I think you could use the current disability system as a way of funneling universal basic income. There's a couple of changes you'd have to make to the regulations, but I think you could, and the statutes, but I think you could do it. The other alternative, and this is again going to religious principles, is you just grant every citizen a certain number of shares of the AI companies, and that way they aren't sad when OpenAI comes in and takes all the jobs from fast food workers. Right? They're excited about it because now their stock goes up and now they make more money. Right? And so I think it creates buy-in. But then the concern would be, what if they sell? And so I've thought about having like a Jubilee year, which is a thing they used to do in the Old Testament. And just like every 7 years, the stock reverts back to you, even if you sold it. I don't know. But I think you have to have some type of monetary exchange. I'm sorry, this is well far afield of medical stuff. You have to have some type of monetary exchange, though. Because there's still going to be scarcity. Like even if you have abundance, there's going to be scarcity of houses next to the person you want to live to on the beach in Florida, right? There's going to be scarcity in that. There's going to be scarcity of antiques. So if I were investing, like buying Chinese antiques right now, that seems like a boon market, like not investment advice, but it seems like a really good market because when they get wealthier, those are the things that are still going to have value and that you can't make new ones of. We're still going to have value for entertainment. You could hear Taylor Swift just as well from your headphones as you can in concert, but it's a different experience, right? And nobody wants to see a robot run a football 100 yards, right? And so I think that there are a bunch of areas in which there will still be scarcity, and so we have to allocate that. The best way to allocate it is either, the two ways to allocate it are someone comes down from the top and says, you get it, you don't, because I'm an authoritarian, or you give people things to trade, and that's currency. And so I hope that we still have some form of currency. And if we're going to have currency, I think you have to have universal basic income. Rant complete and scene.
I love it. I got a rant, and I won't take too much time because I know we're running to the end, but this is so good. I know I have to say we're going to have you back, and if you have time, maybe even as a regular at times, because whatever time, we'd appreciate it. I just want to add to your rant, so much to say, but the skinny is, yes, I call it the great shift. Are we going to lose jobs? Yes and no. If I learn how to redefine myself, case in point, I'm an ER doctor, and if I was still trained as the way I was trained, I'd be obsolete. I had to change. I had to pivot. I had to use new tools. Maybe I don't see you a certain way, and I'm doing reactive medicine today, but in the future, maybe it's more proactive. Maybe I'm guiding the algorithm to guide your digital twin so I can look at you and say, this is coming, my friend. You're about to have cancer in 10 years. You're about to have a heart attack in 12 years. In 1 hour. We need to jump on it. And so now I've shifted my job. It's not the same job, but it's different. Going on your universal income, I truly think it's who's going to get taxed. It's going to be the AI companies as a percentage of how much AI and efficiency they have, and that'll be taxed. And then that money will go into universal income, and that money will be a digital currency that will expire and will have a time set so that it forces the population to spend the money to keep the economy going. As far as, what else did you say? You said so many good, fun stuff. On the doom side, I'll just share a personal story. A friend of mine called me. She's an attorney. And she's like, Harvey, I am worried about your safety. And I'm like, my safety? She's like, yes, think this through, Harvey. She's like, you are waving the flag of AI. You're putting a target. One day, someone's going to lose their job, and they're going to associate you with this, and they're going to want you gone. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm showing the spectrum. I am showing all of it. And she's like, yes, but people are not going to look at the details. They just may say, AI, Harvey, you got to go. And I was like, wow. So anyway, that just kind of like hit me. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm not I'm not that person, but on the religious side, Paul, I said to her, you know what? If God said this is my day, maybe that's already written that that's what was going to happen. So anyway, I don't want to end it with that side. On the positive side, I want to say the following. I love AI, and I'm not saying it to save my life or anything like that. I'm saying it because this is where I'm at. I truly believe, as a doctor, how can I help society? How can I help the world? How can I leverage Phantom Space to use their satellites, their data centers for the entire planet and create a proactive effect to save humanity, to help them live longer, live better, add years to their life, not life to their years. And instead, let's work together, leveraging these tools to help humanity. And that's my goal. Ed?
Well, if we take it back to where we started in terms of Middle Ages, Renaissance, enlightenment, and the way we practice medicine today, you could argue, is Middle Ages with the opportunity for AI. And so I'm with you. That's why we do Signal and Symptoms have great guests like Paul. We have to keep talking about it, but also taking action and encouraging people to do so that we can take advantage, because we've had so many guests on previous shows. We've talked about our own experiences where because of AI, a life was saved. Because of AI, an improved outcome. Because of AI, you have more time with your family. There's so many positive benefits, and we just got to keep pushing forward in a very smart way, so that we can move into this age of enlightenment that we've all been talking about.
Love it.
Well, I'm just going to agree wholeheartedly with Paul. My 10-year-old used Canva and then used AI to create a better video than I could for my company, just because she has all the she used my access, so all my company PowerPoints and everything were there. She was literally going through it, selecting shit, and then was able to make it better than I could. Not better than my graphic designer in the company, but at the end of the day, better. And she's already asking, Baba, can you actually go ahead and twist the story for this particular movie to end like this? And we are looking into what we call the first time on-demand entertainment. And not to mention, I'm just going to say it, like AI porn is going to be, unfortunately, insanely bad for young men, which are, to be honest with you, I talked about Scott Galloway before, that young men are probably the dying breed of this century. Uh, um, I completely 100% agree. Again, Amazon just said that they're going to fire 60,000 people, right? Within the last, they already fired 27,000 or so. And then I talked about dark factories in China, which are not yet here in US, which they will be very soon. And we are going to see an existential crisis. And for me, I mean, I'm in a scrubs right now. I don't need to be, right? I'm not going to go to a hospital. But my job defines my identity at the end. I mean, I'm a startup, I'm an AI, everything else in the world that we do in this show has nothing to do with me being a neurologist. But I'm very happy about it. It gives me joy, it gives me an identity. And if your job is not providing you a sense of identity and purpose, what kind of things we're going to move? The one silver lining, I'm just going to say that we have gone through this, like you said, right? At some point in time in the past, strength was one of the last things that we commoditize, and then we're commoditizing intelligence. We have moved through this process. The pace of innovation really scares the shit out of me, because the problem really is not that I gonna re-upskill myself, which I have to, which is again not uncommon. We do CMEs, continued medical education, but the pace of innovation is very daunting. I'm just going to be honest. This July, I was thought, like, hey, ChatGPT is stuck at 4, Gemini is stuck at 2.5. What's going on? It's been 6 months. And the end of the year, insane. DeepSeek, Z, when we have been, talking about this, and now ability to shrink it to available on edge, I think the pace of innovation is problematic. And just being completely, truly honest on a religious perspective, because we share everything. We are honest here, unfortunately. Anyways, I mean, how you define a human being as compared to animals, and why Jesus take the wheel, is our ability of language. I mean, being a neurologist, brain, I mean, and 60% of the brain is dedicated for language, auditory cortex, visual cortex, all of this. It is truly a spiritual crisis for me at the end of the day, that how do we have never been able to define intelligence, but we have always been relating it to language more so, including all the three major religions are text based. So what we are unfortunately going to have a sort of at least I went through a spiritual crisis. Somebody guided me, but it is a fair. So one identity, work, is gone. The second big identity, religion, is gone, or at least in severe threat. And now you're telling me that there could be a potential. Anyways, living around the antichrist, the last thing I would say is that the rosy picture is this, that we will, Anthony Chang was here, by the way. He was an amazing guest. He runs AI Med. He said, why can't we have a society with 3 days off rather than 2 days off? Why can't we have a society when I work only 6 hours a day or 4 hours a day than 8 hours a day? So there is definitely societal changes that can come as well, which you said, taking away the garbage while improving it. We are running out of time. I'm just going to stop talking. I apologize. I had to say it because, and Paul, we're going to bring you back. We're going to add you on the roster. You're always welcome to join. You can have it on your live LinkedIn as well. So that brings in, because it's very important that we shine light on these things that you're researching and producing. So, anything, closing remarks? Paul, Harvey, and Ed. So, Paul, you go first.
I just say thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. I think I'm really glad that there are people out there fighting for AI to be used more and to be used responsibly. So yeah, there's so much potential here. And in my zone, which is largely policy, most people are just against it. They're just instinctively against it. And so it's good to see some optimism.
I loved hearing, Paul, your perspective, because a lot of times, in these organizations, again, we're very frank on this program. A lot of organizations, they're heavy with legal, and which is important, but to the extent that kind of everything gets choked off, and you have a very reasonable, practical approach. So I appreciate that. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, I love this. It's a village, and honored to meet you as part of our village. And big picture, in my heart, I really appreciate what we're doing. I truly think change is positive. I'm the half class, full kind of person, and I see this technology as helping humanity. So hope you come back. Hope we can continue working together. Pick our brains, even for whatever it's worth, or however we know anything. Happy to help. So, and then to leave it on a positive note, everybody out there, look at AI as riding a bike. When you first started riding a bike, you were scared, but then later you were probably texting and riding your bike. Who knows? But the skinny is you felt comfortable. So use AI to see how it can help you.
Use AI to survive. Again, grateful for everyone to be live on this show. We're going to be next. Again, we go live every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time out of Dallas, Texas. Paul, whenever you're in Dallas, let us know. We'll get you together to grab a dinner. Thank you so much. Everyone, make sure that it uploads properly so that we can have a high quality recording. Thank you. Have a nice day.